Yes. Okay. So, welcome back. So, this is the second part of domain number two, and we are speaking about IT management and some of the practices and processes managed by IT management. So, in IT, we have, or essentially in any organization, we have multiple management function. One of these management function is the human resource management, which is responsible for workforce management, for instance. We have also financial management, and it is responsible for monitoring the expenditures. And we have the IT management, and IT management is responsible for performance management of IT and to ensure that the IT is delivering value to the organizations. For HR management, we could have multiple processes or multiple responsibilities, including the recruiting process, the training requirements, and the cross-training requirement and succession planning, staff retention by doing or by providing compensations and managing the mandatory vacation and so on. And also we have requirements or have processes or tasks that HR responsible for it in relation to staff end of service. So many of these processes are somehow related to information security, and the information security and auditor need to review if HR is performing their task as per each stage from this. For example, the information security or the auditor need to ensure that HR is doing the reasonable background check on the new employee. They need also to ensure that HR is signing or force the new employee to sign non-disclosure agreement before having access to the information systems of the organization, as well as they need to ensure that HR has a kind of process to make the new hires or the new employee is educated about the policies and applicable policies inside the organization. In training as well, IT auditor will be concerned if there is someone in the organization know every aspect about the organization and every detail about the processes implemented inside this organization. Cross training is a very useful way to ensure that I will have a capability to support the business needs in case any problem in staff happened. But be aware that cross training should consider that does not having a single employee who know if all aspects about system processes. That could cause to have a risk that somebody know everything, and as a result for this he can violate the policy or can find the way to evaluate the policy. Mandatory vacation is very important thing that HR need to observe and need to implement, because mandatory vacations usually detect the frauds, especially in finance. Okay, so when having a mandatory vacation for employee, this may lead to identify fraud. For example, in banking sector, especially some bank employee were running a small bank beside their jobs. So if you can get what do I mean, but we observed some incidents, especially in rural location when we could have some bank branches in rural areas or in villages and so on. So the employee in the bank know the clients in person. So whenever the customer come to the bank to deposit money, the employee of the bank does not really deposit the money in the account of the customer. He was depositing this money in a different account, and he then take this money and do a kind of lending and making this asset work in somehow. So at some time this employee was in a vacation or was in an emergency vacation, and during his vacation one of the customers came to the bank asking for the money. By inspecting this customer account, they found nothing, so the fraud detected. So that's why mandatory vacations help in detecting frauds and help in detecting issues. Exit interview is very important, and we need to do exit interview to ensure that or to understand what was the real reason for leaving the organization. So all of these are HR management tasks. However, it is related by somehow with information security and assurance of the organizations. Also, HR is responsible for communicating changes, so they report to different teams in order to revoke the access and so on. HR can do a kind of sourcing for employees in the organization, and IT employees can be in-source or in-house, can be outsourced, and can be hybrid, which means organization can have in-source and outsource employee. Employees also can work on-site and work off-site the way that we are working right now, and employees as well can work offshore, similar to what I'm doing right now. I'm working from a different country. So this is what do we mean by saying offshore employee or offshore outsourcing. The problem with offshore is in some cases the offshore employees could contradict with the privacy requirement or legal requirements. So we may have a statement that allow for offsite, but there could be some of functions that cannot be performed from outside the country, like processing sensitive data from a different country or from a different location. So offshoring of employees may have a legal or privacy issues that could be related to privacy laws. So IS auditor need to review the sourcing practices, and especially for the offshore, we need to ensure that the privacy regulations and legal requirements allow this for happening. And we cannot only hire employee from offshore, but we can also outsource the service. So also for services that will be outsourced to offshore employee, we need to ensure that this outsourcing of these services does not contradict with the legal requirements in the country. We have also some considerations regarding outsourcing. For example, we cannot outsource core functions. If we are bank, we cannot outsource our digital banking system because it could be a core function, so it cannot be outsourced. And for some types of business, specific expertise or specific skills cannot be outsourced. If I am a software company or a software house that my main objective is to develop software, my senior team leader should not be outsourced, or he cannot be outsourced. He should be someone from the actual team of the organization. Function cannot be outsourced due to regulatory requirements. So we cannot outsource core function, specific expertise, and function that cannot be outsourced due to legal requirement. However, we can outsource any other function that we could have better outcome by outsourcing it with the same level of quality with a lower cost. Okay. So when as the IS auditor or information security of information system auditor try to audit the outsourcing of the services, he need to ensure that in contract we have a kind of caring about which function is outsourced, and need to ensure that the outsourced function align with business requirement or align with regulatory or legal requirements. There should be a defined service level requirement in place, and we need to ensure that the outsourced service should be compared in terms of money. How much I would pay for by hosting this service on site, and how much I would pay if I outsourced it. So we need to do a kind of cost benefit analysis to compare the cost of outsourcing in exchange of cost of insourcing. Select the appropriate service provider, and this essentially mean I am thinking about outsource a certain function. So I need to research about this service provider, understand what is his financial standing. Is he an old company or a new or a startup company? The problem with startup and the new companies is it can quit the market at any time because it is still in non-stable position from finance perspective. So we need to select the appropriate service provider. We need to set up contractual requirement in the contract. In this contractual requirement, we need to mention performance needs we need to mention confidentiality and the integrity and the availability requirement, as well as the non-disclosure agreement statement. We need also to ensure that we have the right to audit. So whenever we outsource a service to a third party, we need to have like guarantees that he will adhere to our CIA requirements. And the best way to ensure that he will follow and he will adapt and align with our requirement is not to have the statement in the contract, is not to have the fines and the payment in case of non-compliance. The best assurance here will be to have the right to audit. So by having the ability to audit this provider, you will have the highest level of guarantee. And of course, you can remember is that providers can respond to the right to audit request by SOC report. Okay. And we need also to have like provisions for the business continuity plan. Provision or provisions in relation to contracts is like statement inside the contract. So we need to have CIA provisions, right to audit provision or statement or clause, BCP or business continuity plan. What are the aspects that this provider is taking in consider in order to deal with loss of service? We have some, sorry. We have also some risks that are related to outsourcing, and we will discuss some of its mitigations technique. One of these risks is the non-compliance with performance requirements. In this case, we need to ensure that we have clear requirements and SLA that is reviewed before making the contract, and we should have the right to audit in order to be able to measure and assess the non-compliance. If we have startup software house that could provide us with a solution or a software that will help us to achieve our objectives, but we have a problem that this software corporate or software house is a startup. As this software house is a startup company, so he might be in non-strong financial position. So we can include the agreement or include in the contract what is called software escrow agreement. And allow me to discuss what I am meaning here, because I feel that you might not follow. So we are here speaking about some of the risks that could be related to outsourcing. So the first one is, what if the provider does not comply with performance requirements? We need to mention this requirement first in contract, and after then we need to have the right to audit, so to evaluate from time to time. The second one is you can find yourself in a situation where you issued a tender or request for proposal for a new software or a software to do a certain objective. And you find a competent or a good offer from a startup software company or startup software house. And you have like confidence that they will guarantee or they will provide a high level of service better than some of the big companies with a competent and a competitive cost in terms of price. So you will accept to take this software from this software house. However, you are afraid that this small software house could quit the market at any time. So what is the guarantee that you will place in the contract? The problem if the software house quits the market is if this software is not open source software, or you don't have the source code, is that if this software house quits the market, you will lose the source code, you will lose the updates, the patches, and so on. So in this case, we have a provision or a statement in the contract called a software escrow agreement. And in software escrow agreement, we have a deal with a third party. I am the first company and this is the software house. And we have another company, which could be a bank or could be insurance company, something like this. And we agree with each other that the source code developed by the software house will be kept in the safe or in a safe with the insurance company. and the insurance company will have like an order that in case B or in case the software house quits the market, it will release the source code to the customers of this software house. So this will provide a kind of guarantee that in case the software house, which is a startup and not in a good financial position, quit the market for any reason, the software or the insurer or the scrower in this case will release the code or will share the code when requested to the customers or the clients of this software house. Yeah, but we will have access to the source code itself. So the developing team of the original of the customer can do a kind of reverse engineering, do a kind of maintenance for the code, and try to re-engineer the product in a way that supports the business. It is not easy to do right, but the problem to be a closed source without ability to fix batches or introduce. For example, when the case of Log4j happened from 4 or 5 months, the issue with Log4j, excuse me, just 1 minute. 1 minute, I will come back, okay? Excuse me. Okay, no issue. Sorry. So when the case of Log4j happened, many corporate and many companies were in this situation that they have an old solution that was purchased from a small startup company, and this company used the Log4j as a log handler in their products. So as a result, they were feeling lost because they don't have the original source code, they don't have a maintenance contract, the company is not existed in first place. So many organizations try to do a kind of reverse engineering for this product in order to get the source code in some term and do the required batch. It is not an easy task, yes, but it is still doable by the experts. Dependence on a single supplier can be used by using multiple suppliers. So by not focusing or by not using a single supplier, we can avoid this risk. IT change management is one of the practices that are done by information technology management team, and IT change management is a control. It is a preventive control, in fact, because by having a proper change management process, sudden change or sudden outage that could happen due to not planning properly the change can be mitigated. So change management is a kind of preventive control, and the change management include approval, testing, scheduling, risk assessment, and arrangements for rollback in case the change went wrong. System batches, for instance, should be tested before or prior to be implemented, and the change management is managed by a committee or by a group called Change Advisory Board, and the Change Advisory Board would include members from different functions, including IT and the business function as well. So we could have in our Change Advisory Board someone from finance, someone from procurement, and why they are exist in this committee, because they know the timing, the season time, the peak time for the sales and so on. So they could protest any change that could affect the environment in a negative way. So here is the process of change management. First, the change sponsor requests the change, and then we do a kind of analysis and impact analysis. Based on that, we approve or deny by the CAP, and then we implement the change, and then we review and report the change. Changes that are done by, I will come back. Hello. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi. ازيك يا محمد؟ ايه الاخبار؟ عامل ايه؟ صوتك واضح، صوتك واضح. معلش انا بس عشان في حته ما فيهاش شبكه، معلش لحظه واحده عشان بس المكتب بتاعي مفيش شبكه. إيه الأخبار؟ عامل إيه؟ ايوه ايوه محمد، لا سعيد. هتصل بيهم رقم تاني، مش هو رقم كويس معايا. ماشي، واتشرفت بيكم قداما يعني. خلاص حبيبي. So sorry for the interruption. So we have I believe we now get overview about change management process, and remember that change management process is a kind of prevention control. It prevent the error that could be caused by improper management of new change to the system. However, we have different type of changes that we can see in IT, such as the standard change. And the standard change is a typical change, and it requires documentation but does not require authorization from the CAP. One of the standard changes is like, for instance, creating a new user account. It is a frequent, it is does not have a severe impact, but it need to be documented. So it is pre-approved already by the CAP. Normally, changes are the changes that, like patching, doing an update, and so on. And it could change the function or affect the function. And this type of change should be assessed by the CAP. We also have a major change, and the major change is similar to the normal change, except it affects a critical function in the organization. So updating the print server is not updating the core banking system. So this is not the same. So updating the print server according to organization could not be a very critical function. But the banking system or the core banking system would be a critical function and need to be assessed and approved by CAP and the management as well. So both CAP and the management or top management should be notified and approve the change. We have also what is called emergency change, and the emergency change is the kind of a change that should be done right now, such as we have a severe vulnerability, yeah, and we need to do a change just right now. This kind of a change could be done without CAP approval. However, in some organizations, we have a process for approving the emergency change. Yeah, ECAP. But the problem with emergency change is that the risk is not assessed for this change. So the possibility of failure of this change is the highest. Okay, and although the assessment of risk is not conducted before the ECAP, but during the next CAP meeting, the change should be assessed and should be reviewed and documented in a proper way. But the most type of a change that could result in a failure will be emergency change, because we don't have risk assessment from the beginning, and also we don't have a kind of rollback scenario. So let's see this question. That's right. Emergency change could be implemented instantly, but it should be reviewed and discussed during the next CAP to be documented in a proper way. IT performance management is another function that is done by IT, and the reason or the goal of IT performance management is to measure the performance, is to ensure that the performance of the employee is complying with the requirement and is assessed based on expected output. Metrics should be regularly assessed for adequacy, and the metrics of performance measurement should adopt the concept of SMART. Any metric should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. What we mean here, I need to assess the time of response to user request. So I need to have a metrics in place to ensure that the time is or the service is operating or is implemented in a proper way. So I need to have a specification for this metric. So I will mention that the response to users' complaints, the first response will be within 15 minutes of reporting. The initial feedback should be not less than 1 hour. And the closure of severe request or critical request should be within 4 hours. So this is what we mean by specific metrics that we are placing. Also, metrics should be measurable. So we use the term minutes, hours, and so on. That's make it measurable, and it should be achievable and reliable. It should be something that could be achieved, not very imaginary. And it should be relevant and time bound, which means it is timely. It will achieve the objective in the time. So in performance management, we have different techniques that we could rely on, such as Six Sigma. And Six Sigma is one of the performance management techniques that analyze the process to improve and reduct or do a kind of reduction for defects. We also have the IT Balanced Scorecard, and the IT Balanced Scorecard is a process management evaluation technique. We use it to assess the relation between IT function and the different processes, and we will discuss the IT Balanced Scorecard in more details. Key performance indicators are the metrics that we are placing in order to assess the performance level and if this performance level meet our requirements. And root cause analysis is also one of the practices that we are using to identify what is the cause of a certain issue or what is the cause of a certain incident. As a result from the output of the root cause analysis, we can improve the control environment, we can improve the process, improve the function, and so on. Balanced Scorecard is one of the most effective IT governance tools, and it requires the presence of KPI. Because based on KPI, we can assess the satisfaction level of customer. We can assess the compliance level, or in other words, the efficiency level of financial team. We can also measure the effectiveness of internal processes and measure the effectiveness of learning and development program. So without having KPI in place, we could not have the balanced scorecard effective. Balanced scorecard main objective is to show the efficiency and value creation of the IT team. So in balanced scorecard, we incorporate many aspects with the IT, such as learning and development and the growth of the organization, such as customer satisfaction and loyalty, such as financial financial optimization and cost optimization and return of investment. We assess the impact of IT on over every part of these parts. And in order to assess the impact of IT, it makes sense that we need to have a proper KPIs to measure this impact and understand to how much extent this impact is contributing in these processes in a proper and in a positive way. Balanced scorecard help to align IT with business needs. And the IT Balanced Scorecard evaluate financial aspects, evaluate customer satisfaction, evaluate internal processes, and evaluate innovation and growth. So in general, IT Balanced Scorecard is a tool that helps to align IT with business needs by evaluating the effect of IT and how much the IT is contribute in financial optimization, cost optimization, and in customer satisfaction, and so on. And without the presence of KPIs, the balanced scorecard could not be implemented. Okay? So quality assurance and quality management are two functions that lie under the quality control in the organization. And the key difference between the quality assurance of the organization is quality assurance is similar to audit somehow. Quality assurance help or try to focus on processes and try to set standards that help the developer, for instance, from falling in a problem by developing a kind of standard that should be followed in order to prevent the defects from happening. So that makes the quality assurance process as a proactive process. It try to detect issues or try to develop a standard in order to prevent issues from happening. While quality control, in other terms, is a practice or is a function that is concerned about discovering defects before introducing it in the production. So to make the thing clear here, we are evaluating the difference between quality assurance and quality control. The one of these two functions who is more has more broad and has more proactive objective is the quality assurance. Quality assurance sets the standard, try to develop best practices. They are not inspecting a software, but they are developing a secure code standard or developing a secure standard for implementation. So whenever the developer try to develop a new code, he should follow the standards or guidelines introduced or communicated by the quality assurance team. So they are process focused and they are proactive, and their goal is to prevent the defect from occur from the beginning. While quality control is focused on the product itself. They wait for the developer to develop the code, for example, and then they do kind of test to ensure that this code is free from defects. And this is a reactive approach or a reactive function. Okay? By having a quality assurance and quality control in place, you will achieve quality management in the organization. This is okay. When I meant by saying that quality assurance is a kind of audit, is that quality assurance has like a general objective from promoting compliance, promoting the need for adopting a standard in developing or implementing solutions in the organization, while quality control will be concerned about actual operation or actual checking. So forget about when I said quality assurance is similar to an audit, but I was just trying to simplify that quality assurance have a wider scope than the quality control. Quality assurance is kind of proactive, while quality control is a reactive. What we mean here by proactive and reactive is that quality assurance is a managerial tool. We use the quality assurance or quality assurance team is responsible for developing network security standard. They need to include requirement for network security, such as TLS 1.2 is recommended, TLS 1.1 is not recommended. Use SSH, don't use Telnet, and so on. So whenever the network security team implement a new firewall, he apply a kind of hardening or apply a kind of configurations to harden this system. So the quality control team will use the standard created by Q&A or quality assurance to ensure that the configuration made in real life is aligning with the standard introduced by Q&A. Okay, but of course this is just an example. We also have this Deming cycle wheel, and a Deming cycle wheel is stand for plan, do, check, act. So in quality assurance, we use the concept of or generally in process improvement in the organization, we use the model of plan, do, check, act, and I believe it makes sense to you. BDCA model promotes that you need to do plan, need to then do the task based on the plan, and then check the result, and then act based on this result. And this is the essence of continuous improvement in the organization. Maturity framework are kind of frameworks that help the organization to assess the current status in compared to the desired state. So in IT, we have multiple models that help us to do a kind of maturity assessment. The most common or the most well-known model of this model is the CMMI. CMMI is stand for Capability Maturity Model. And in Capability Maturity Model, we assess a certain process such as change management. When we assess the maturity level of a process such as change management, for instance, we first ask a question, which is, do we have a process called the change management from the beginning or not? If we have a process called the change management process, then we will have a level of 1. But if we don't have, then we have maturity model of 0. Level or maturity level of 1 means that the process exists, but the process is not predictable. It does not controlled in a good manner, and it is a reactive. We do a change management process only if there is a requirement from the management, or if we are going through a hard change or something unusual. But generally, we are not using it in a consistent approach. Okay? The second level is to have the process in place, and you have characteristics for this process. And this is the level 2 of Capability Maturity Model, to have a process and this process is managed. The third level is to have a defined process. This means that process is defined and it is a proactive, not reactive, and the output of this process is somehow predictable. The fourth level is quantitatively managed, and that means that process is measured and controlled. And the fifth level of the maturity model is optimizing, and in this phase, we are focusing on process improvement. So we already have process, and this process produce expected output, and this process is measured and controlled, and we are focusing on process improvement in this case. And as we go through in these levels, we will have an increased maturity level. So just to express what we are about here. Every organization need a kind of tool that can answer the question that if we are performing in accepted way or not. What is our rating in compared to other organizations working in the same field? So if you have a function such as strategic analytics or data analytics or change management or risk management, you would probably need to have a kind of certification or a kind of assessment that tells you what are the problems in your risk management function. In this case, you request an audit or you request an assessment from the CMMI. CMMI is provided by an institute. This institute come and do a kind of assessment for a processes that you have or a certain process. And it do a kind of assessment to define at which level you are currently in. You could have this process defined, and this, by the way, is a good status. So not every organization would achieve the level optimized, but having an assessment for how much I am good. CMMI is a stand for Capability Maturity Model, and it helps organizations to understand its maturity level in exchange or when it compared with other peers. And usually organizations look for capability maturity assessment for its key functions. If I am an auditing firm, then I need to have a maturity assessment for my risk assessment process. This could help me in marketing my service in a proper way, in a better way to others. During an audit and during auditing the management of IT, the auditor may find some warning or some flags or red flags, and these flags could indicate problems such as excessive cost, such as budget overrun, such as suspended development projects, such as high staff turnover or staff without adequate experience, lack of adequate training, and lack of succession planning. Frequent hardware or software errors could indicate that there is an issue in hardware management in the organization. Excessive backlog of user requests, such as a huge number of tickets assigned to the service desk. I understand that I have this issue, but not because inefficiently, but because the request in the bank is very huge. I have experience in this part. Unsupported hardware and software purchases, over-reliance on one or two key people, and the absence of succession planning. All of this could be indicators of the problem in the IT management. And the IS auditor could need to check for these issues if happening, because budget overrun could mean that there is no project steering committee in place. Staff turnover could indicate that HR or management strategy or the management is not, there is a problem in management in general or people management. Excessive backlog of user requests may be because improper SLA or not realistic requirements, and over-reliance on one or two key people will mean that not all people have the same shared responsibilities or same accountability in the organization. So this ends domain number 2, and it is fairly a shorter domain when it